A billion-dollar construction project just went dark overnight, because a disabled veteran with 90 acres and a coat pocket full of patience said 2 words, "Not yet." What happens when the smallest man in the room turns out to be the only one who read the fine print? Preston Hale had not slept. It was 6:47 in the morning when he called his client, and his hands were not steady. $41 million in grading equipment was sitting idle on 8,700 acres of eastern Montana flatland, and every permit for the Meridian Agricultural Holdings Eastern Corridor had been pulled. Not suspended, not delayed, pulled. Hale had 2 associates in the room, a speakerphone in the center of the conference table, and a problem none of them could explain without also explaining why they had underestimated a 63-year-old disabled veteran with a cattle operation and a bad knee. The man's name was Raymond Delks. He owned 90 acres. That was all it took. Hale pulled the survey map from the folder his associate slid across the table. One rectangle, outlined in red pen, sitting directly across the only legal access corridor Meridian needed to move equipment between the western processing site and the eastern holding. Without that corridor, the eastern facility could not receive materials. Without materials, it could not open. Without opening, the $41 million already sunk into the ground was just dirt. Hale called Raymond's number. It rang 4 times. Raymond picked up, said nothing, and waited. Hale introduced himself. He used the word urgent twice. He said Meridian was prepared to be very generous, and that a meeting at Raymond's earliest convenience would be. Raymond said, "I'll call you back." He hung up. Hale set the phone down and stared at the survey map for a long time. 23 years earlier, the Collier County Fairgrounds did not look like the place where anything important happened. 4 folding tables had been pushed together to make an auctioneer's stand. A hand-lettered sign taped to a microphone read "Surplus Land Auction, County Commissioner's Office." A coffee pot sat on a card table near the door. 2 women from the assessor's office handled paperwork. Maybe 40 people filled the folding chairs, most of them developers and land speculators who had driven down from Billings in clean boots. Raymond Delks sat in the 3rd row. He wore a canvas jacket. He was 40 years old. He had a paper cup of coffee going cold in one hand and a small green notebook open on his knee. The notebook had been a gift from his wife, Carol. She had written his name inside the front cover in blue ink. He did not talk to the men around him. He watched the auctioneer work through the first 6 lots, parcels going to the developers in the clean boots, prices climbing fast, men nodding and raising paddles like they were checking boxes on a list. Raymond marked nothing in his notebook during those 6 lots. He just watched and waited and let his coffee go cold. Lot 7 came up. The auctioneer described it quickly. 90 acres of dry tableland, eastern valley, no river frontage, no paved road access. A county gravel road dead-ended at the property line and went no further. 2 previous owners had tried to run cattle and walked. The assessor had it listed as marginal agricultural land, low value, poor drainage in wet years, hard pan soil in dry ones. Nobody in the room stirred. Raymond raised his numbered paddle. $47 an acre. $4,230 for the whole parcel. Nobody countered. The auctioneer moved on to Lot 8 before the room had time to react. From the row behind Raymond came a short laugh. Then a voice. A man named Cole Strickland, Regional Land Director for a development group out of Billings, a man who had spent the morning buying 4 other parcels and was feeling good about himself. He leaned to the man beside him and said something in a low voice. The man beside him laughed too. Raymond did not turn around. He wrote the price in his notebook. $4,230. Then he walked to the assessor's table, signed the transfer documents, and accepted the receipt. He folded it once, then again, and slipped it into the inside pocket of his canvas jacket. He refilled his coffee. He stood near the door for the last 3 lots, watching Strickland buy 2 more parcels with the easy confidence of a man who believed the room already belonged to him. Raymond did not introduce himself. He drove home on a county road that ran along the edge of the valley, one hand on the wheel, the window cracked. He passed the eastern ridge, where the tableland went flat and pale in the late October light. He passed the survey stake at the corner of what was now, legally, his. He did not stop. Carol was in the kitchen when he came in. She looked at his face, and then at the notebook in his hand. She said, "Well?" Raymond set the notebook on the table and poured the last of the coffee from the pot on the stove. He said, "Got it?" She waited. He did not add anything. He sat down at the table and opened the notebook to the page with $4,230 written at the top. Below the number he wrote one more line in small, careful letters. He read it once. Then he closed the notebook. He did not share what the line said. Not with Carol. Not with anyone. Because Raymond Elks had spent the last 3 months in the county library reading documents nobody else had ever thought to pull, and what he had found in those boxes was not something that needed to be explained out loud. It just needed to be true. And it was. Before this goes further, hit subscribe right now, because what's about to unfold is the kind of long game most people never see coming. Don't miss the moment it all pays off. Esther Brace had worked the county records desk since 1971. And in all that time nobody had ever asked her for road expansion surveys from the 1940s. Until Raymond Elks walked in on a Tuesday morning in July 1999 with a legal pad and asked politely for anything she had. She brought him 3 boxes. He came back 4 more times. The library reading room was quiet in the mornings. One fluorescent bulb flickered near the window. Raymond spread the documents across a long oak table and read them the way he had once read terrain maps in the army, not skimming, not looking for headlines, but reading for what was missing. For the gap between what was recorded and what was built. For the thing everyone had agreed to do and then quietly forgot. He found it in the second box. It was a 1956 county planning document. 16 pages, stapled at the corner, coffee-stained on the title page. A road extension survey commissioned during the post-war agricultural expansion, when the county had mapped out a plan to connect the Eastern Valley to the state highway system. The plan called for extending County Road 7, the same gravel road that dead-ended at what would later become Lot 7, an additional 2.3 miles east, across the low tableland, to connect to State Route 212 on the far side of the valley. The extension was never built. A 1959 budget shortfall killed the funding. A 1961 memo listed the project as deferred pending future appropriations. Then nothing. No cancellation. No formal dissolution. No commissioner's vote closing it out. Just silence. Raymond read the 1961 memo 3 times. He turned to his legal pad and wrote, "Not cancelled. Deferred. Check abandonment statute." He drove to the county courthouse that afternoon and read Montana Code annotated on road easements. An unbuilt road corridor listed as deferred, with no formal abandonment vote on record, remained in active county interest under the statute. The easement line was still alive on the books. And the easement line ran directly through the eastern edge of Lot 7. He did not celebrate. He did not call anyone. He drove home and sat at the kitchen table with a blank piece of paper. Carol was at the stove. The kettle was on. He drew the valley from memory, the county road, the tableland, the ridge, the state highway on the far side. He drew the easement corridor as a narrow band crossing the eastern edge of Lot 7. Then he drew, lightly in pencil, where a developer would need to build if they ever wanted to connect a western holding to the eastern acreage. The pencil line ran straight through his strip. Carol set a cup of tea beside his hand and looked at the map for a moment. She said, "Is that the piece you're watching?" Raymond said yes. She didn't ask anything else. Over the following months he drove the valley road slowly on Sunday mornings, a notebook in the passenger seat. He watched for survey flags. He watched for tire tracks on the dirt access roads. He watched for the small, boring signs that land is being studied, LLC filings at the county clerk's office, transfer deeds recorded for parcels west of the ridge, a new name appearing on property rolls. In August 2000 he found it. A Billings-registered LLC had purchased 3 parcels on the western side of the valley. The name on the filing was Meridian Land Partners. The parcels totaled 280 acres. Raymond wrote the name in his notebook. He pulled the mineral rights records next. That took 2 more library visits. What he found was a 1974 filing, misfiled, recorded under the wrong parcel number, sitting uncorrected for 26 years, that transferred subsurface water corridor rights along the eastern tableland to whoever held surface title on the parcel later auctioned as Lot 7. He called the county clerk's office from a payphone. He read her the filing number. She confirmed it was on record. She confirmed the error. She filed a correction sheet 3 days later. Raymond drove home. The correction was now clean. The mineral rights were attached to Lot 7. His lot. He spread all the pieces across the kitchen table that evening: the 1956 survey, his handwritten map, the LLC transfer filings, the corrected mineral rights document, a list of every parcel Meridian had purchased and every parcel still outstanding between the Western Holding and the State Highway. He drew one line connecting them all. It crossed his 90 acres. There was no other route that avoided a 3-mile detour through protected wetland on the northern end or a private holding with a no trespass order on the southern end. If Meridian kept buying, they would eventually own everything in the valley except one thing: Raymond's strip. He closed the notebook. He did not look at the map again that night. He didn't need to. $42,000. The woman who said it was young, maybe 28, standing on Raymond's front porch on a Tuesday afternoon in spring 2006 with a clipboard and a card from a company called Western Land Partners. She had driven 2 hours from Billings. Her boots were clean. Her handshake was firm. She said $42,000 for 90 acres was well above market, and that her client was motivated and that this was a strong offer. Raymond opened the screen door and looked at her. He said, "Thank you for making the drive." She waited. He said, "I'm not selling." She left the card. He put it in the kitchen drawer. Carol was watching from the hallway. She didn't say anything until the car was back on the county road, and then she said just, "Still?" Raymond said still. He mowed the strip that June, same as every June. The county road dead-ended at his east fence line, and he kept the fence posts straight and the markers clear. He paid the annual property tax, $214 that year, in March, same as every year, same as he had since 2001. He filed no disputes, made no noise, gave nobody a reason to look twice at the parcel. In October 2006 he saw the survey crews on the eastern ridge for the first time. 3 men with equipment and a white truck. He watched them from the fence line for 10 minutes, then went back to the house. He wrote the date in his notebook. The second offer came by phone in the fall of 2009. A man named Gerald Dawes, who worked for the county commissioner's office, called on a Thursday morning and explained that Meridian Agricultural Holdings had applied for a development permit in the Eastern Valley. He said there were economic development considerations, regional employment projections, a state-level interest in land cooperation. He said the county wanted Raymond to know that any voluntary transaction would be viewed favorably. Raymond said, "Is the county making me an offer?" Dawes paused. He said, "Meridian is prepared to offer $112,000 for the parcel." Raymond said, "Tell them no thank you." He hung up and wrote the number in his notebook. Below it he wrote, "County involved now. They're out of direct options." His daughter Claire was home that Christmas. She was 12, and she followed Raymond out to the east fence on a cold morning while he checked the line posts. She looked at the strip of land, brown and flat and bare in December, and asked why they kept it if nobody used it. Raymond said, "Because someday somebody will need to." She thought about that for a minute. Then she asked, "Who?" Raymond said, "The people who keep calling." Claire looked at the fence post. She said, "Are you going to sell it to them?" Raymond said, "No." She didn't ask why. She just nodded, the way Carol nodded, like the answer made sense even if she couldn't quite see the whole shape of it yet. In Billings, Cole Strickland was not having a good 2011. Meridian had assembled 6,000 acres in the Western Valley and broken ground on a grain processing facility with a projected capacity of 400,000 bushels per year. The eastern parcel, where the distribution infrastructure was planned, required road access through the corridor. Every routing study came back to the same conclusion. Raymond's strip was not one option among several. It was the only option. Strickland had a lawyer draft an access request in January. Raymond did not respond. In March, Strickland called his land director and said, "Find out what he wants." His land director said, "He doesn't want anything." Strickland said, "Everyone wants something." He flew to Billings, rented a car, and drove 2 hours to Collier County himself. The third offer arrived on a Wednesday morning in April 2013. A man in a three-piece suit came to the front door with a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Arthur Plank, counsel for Meridian Agricultural Holdings. He said Meridian was authorized to offer $387,000 for the 90-acre parcel, a figure representing $4,300 per acre. Carol had put the kettle on when she saw the car come up the drive. Plank sat at the kitchen table and opened his briefcase. He placed a single-page term sheet on the table. Raymond looked at it. He said, "I appreciate you coming out." Plank said, "It's a strong number, Mr. Delks." Raymond said, "I know." Plank said, "Is there a number that works for you?" Raymond said, "No." Plank clicked his briefcase shut. He left the term sheet on the table. After he was gone, Carol poured 2 cups of tea and sat across from Raymond. She looked at the paper. She said, $4,300 an acre? Raymond said, "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay." One word. Same word she had said at the kitchen table in 1999 when he had showed her the hand-drawn map for the first time. Raymond put the term sheet in the kitchen drawer with the other cards. He paid the 2013 tax bill, $231, in March, same as always. He mowed the strip in June. He wrote nothing in the notebook that year except the date of Plank's visit and the number, $387,000. Meridian kept building. The Eastern Facility foundations went in. The access road issue sat in a drawer in Strickland's office marked pending. It sat there for 9 more years. Then, on a cold morning in February 2022, Raymond's phone rang before 7. An unfamiliar number. Billings area code. He looked at it for 3 rings. He picked up. The voice on the line said, "Mr. Delks, I'm calling on behalf of Meridian with a revised offer. $1.2 million. Cash. 30-day close." Raymond said, "I'll call you back." He hung up. He sat at the kitchen table for a moment with the phone face down in front of him. Then he picked it up again and dialed a number in Missoula. His daughter answered on the second ring. He said, "Claire? I need you to come home." Claire Delks was 34 years old. She had passed the Montana bar in 2018 and spent the following years doing commercial real estate transactions in Missoula. She understood land titles, deed restrictions, access easements, and county filing systems the way her father had once understood terrain maps. She drove home that Friday. Raymond set 3 items on the kitchen table. The first was the original 1956 County Road Extension Survey, photocopied from the library's records, the deferred notation highlighted in yellow. The second was the 1974 mineral rights filing with the corrected parcel number, and the clerk's own correction sheet attached. The third was the folded receipt from the 2001 auction, $4,230. And at the bottom, in Raymond's handwriting, a single line describing what the parcel included and what it sat astride. Claire read all 3 without speaking. Then she said, "Dad?" Raymond poured coffee. She said, "They've built $41 million on the wrong side of this piece of paper." Raymond said, "Yes." She asked, "How long have you had this?" He said, "Since 1999? Claire looked at the 3 documents for another long moment. Then she picked up her phone and called Preston Hale's office. Meridian's legal team filed a quiet title action 8 weeks later, arguing that the 1956 corridor had been abandoned through decades of non-use and that the 1974 mineral rights document was void due to the original recording error. Claire appeared at the county hearing room on a Tuesday morning with a single folder. She placed 3 documents on the table. The 1956 survey deferred, not cancelled. The 1961 budget memo, which used the word deferred and not dissolved and not terminated and not closed. And 23 consecutive annual property tax statements for Lot 7, running from 2001 to 2023, each one paid, each one issued by the county itself. Claire looked at Meridian's 2 attorneys across the table. she said. You can't claim abandonment on a parcel the county kept taxing. The hearing officer asked Meridian's lead attorney if he wished to respond. He said he needed a moment to confer with his client. He took 11 minutes. When he came back, he said Meridian was withdrawing the quiet title action. The hearing officer noted the withdrawal. The room cleared in 4 minutes. Meridian's lawyer reached for his phone before he was out the door. The negotiation lasted 6 days. Raymond did not attend. Claire handled it by phone from the kitchen table while Carol made dinner in the background. Meridian's first counter to Claire's terms was a lump sum, $2 million, structured payout, 5-year installment. Claire said, "He doesn't want a lump sum." They said, "What does he want?" She said, "A permanent access easement. Monthly payment. Inflation adjusted. Transferable to his heirs." They said the monthly figure was too high. She said, "Then we'll see what the county does with the 1956 corridor when we file to have it formally reinstated." They called back in 4 hours. They accepted every term. The monthly easement payment was set at $7,200, adjusted annually. The subsurface water corridor access fee added an additional fixed rate reviewed every 5 years. The agreement was permanent, registered with the county, and could not be terminated by a sale of Meridian's holdings. Claire called Raymond on a Thursday evening. She said, "It's done?" They took the terms. Raymond said, "Thank you, Claire." He hung up. Carol was at the stove. She heard his voice. She did not ask what was decided. She put the kettle on. The signing was at the county clerk's office on a Monday. Raymond and Claire sat across from Plank, who had come back with a new briefcase and less confidence. The documents were signed in order. The easement was registered. The first payment was scheduled for the 1st of the following month. Raymond shook Plank's hand and left. He walked to his truck in the parking lot. He opened the glove compartment and took out the green notebook, the one Carol had given him, with his name written in blue ink on the inside cover. He turned to the last page. He wrote the date. Below it he wrote, "Agreement filed. Easement registered. Never sold an inch." He closed the notebook and drove home. In Billings, Cole Strickland read about the agreement in a regional agricultural trade newsletter 3 weeks later. There was a short paragraph. No photograph. No quote from Strickland. He did not comment. At the Collier County Fairgrounds, one of the men who had been at the 2001 auction, a developer who had bought Lot 9 that day and sold it at a loss in 2008, heard the story from the assessor's office. He told 2 other men at the diner on Main Street. None of them laughed. Some men look at 90 acres of dry tableland and see nothing worth keeping. Raymond Delks looked at the same 90 acres and saw 23 years of someone else building their problem. If you had been in that room, would you have taken the $1.2 million and walked, or would you have stayed for the monthly deal that pays forever? Drop your answer below. And if this kind of long game story is what you're here for, you're in the right place.